I learned it the hard way. So, like I said, our firm was founded by two great trial lawyers, John Riccolo, David Baker. And when Baker went on the bench, then John owned the firm, and I got some equity in the firm. And ultimately, Presley joined in. He got some equity in the firm. And then there came a day when John said, "You know what? I think I'm done being financially responsible for the firm. Let's work out a buyout plan." And that was great. But up until that point in time, Presley and I had never had a professional relationship with the bank. We didn't have a professional line of credit. We didn't have anything set up like that at all.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. This is going to be a fun one today. I've been looking forward to this. We've got Tim Semelroth on with us today. I'm in a great legal marketing mastermind with Tim, and I'll tell you, whenever Tim speaks, listen. He's always got really thoughtful things to say, and I know he's going to have a lot of good stuff to share with us today. So Tim is I'll call you a trucking lawyer from Iowa, but you have, I believe, the biggest personal injury firm in Iowa. Maybe I'm wrong, but why don't you introduce yourself, Tim? Tell us about you and your firm and what you guys do.
Well, you got it all right. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to chat. I always enjoy talking to you and learning from you whenever we get together. But you got it right. I am a trucking lawyer from Iowa, and my firm is the largest personal injury firm in the state of Iowa. We have offices in Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, and Dubuque.
So I want to get into some of the history of your firm for sure, but sort of big picture, personal injury firms, they can mean a lot of different things. You've got high volume, low volume, trial work, pretrial work, referral shops. So you got all sorts of, you've got boutique, med-mal, all these sorts of things. How would you describe your firm? Do you do it all, or are there certain areas you don't do?
Well, Iowa only has 3 million people. So if you want to practice personal injury law, you have to be able to do a number of different things. So we have 16 lawyers in the firm, and we have lawyers who do, traditional personal injury, car wrecks, premises liability cases, things like that. We have lawyers in the firm who specialize in medical malpractice. My partner Presley is the premier nursing home abuse and neglect lawyer in the state. We have lawyers that do workers' compensation, that do Social Security disability, and who do plaintiff's employment law work. And so the one thing that we all have in common is that we're all trial lawyers. We try cases. So even though we have a big firm, we handle a lot of cases. The reason why lawyers refer cases to us is because we'll take them to trial if we need to.
And what's your role in the firm? I know you try cases, and I know you do trucking cases. Are you managing partner, or how do you guys delineate those sorts of administrative aspects between the partners?
It's not as, hierarchical as you would expect it to be. We have 4 equity partners in the firm, and each of us have kind of gravitated towards a particular aspect of management. So my role in terms of leadership in the firm is primarily related to managing our firm's marketing and outreach. I have partners who spend more time in terms of HR type things, hiring, interviewing. Another partner who focuses mostly on the finances. They're the ones who are talking to the bank, malpractice, insurance brokers, that sorts of thing. And then we make most major decisions together, but we also trust each other. So 9 times out of 10, I'll be making marketing decisions and just let the partners know as they come up.
That's key. I handle a lot of law firm breakups, a lot of partnership disputes, and question I always get, on the front end, people come and they say, hey, we want to do this partnership. What do we do to make sure it works? And, it's like a marriage. You can't guarantee anything. But, again, you got to trust that your other folks are doing what they're supposed to do, and they have to trust you likewise. So it sounds like you guys have figured that out, and it seems to be working, whatever you guys are doing.
Well, I like to say we are the firm that mock trial built. For those of people who don't know, mock trial is a competition where you have students on teams being lawyers and witnesses on both sides of a case. And so my partner Presley and I met each other on the trial team at law school at the University of Iowa College of Law. And then our other two partners are former mock trial students of mine. So we have a long history with each other. And yes, we have a lot of trust because we've known each other for years and years.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the mock trial stuff later. I definitely want to hit that because I think that's really interesting and cool, some of the stuff you're doing there. But let's talk about sort of your firm. You said you had 3 locations now. I know it didn't start that way. I think, all firms start with 1 location. I want to get a sense for some of the evolution of the firm and how it's grown over time, both in terms of sort of your role in it and maybe some of the practice areas you covered and the different sort of the geographic spread that you've done over time. So let's start with, I don't believe you started the firm, but at some point you did sort of take over the firm. So maybe go back to that.
Sure. So I'm glad I got a chance to say that. I was feeling a little guilty that I was on the Founding Partners podcast when I didn't actually found our firm. Our firm was founded back in 1989 by 2 great trial lawyers, and I was their first associate hire. And when they hired me, they were primarily known as a medical malpractice plaintiff's boutique firm. And they would do other types of personal injury cases. But if you asked, 10 people in the know in the state of Iowa, what were they known for? It was plaintiff's medical malpractice. And so that's the firm that hired me. In the process of working for them, I had a chance to do all kinds of personal injury cases, car accidents, even some workers' compensation. And so ultimately, when one of the partners left to go on the bench, we brought in Presley, and Presley came with his own specialty. As I said, he's one of the best nursing home lawyers in the country. And so that was when we first realized it's like, hey, we can have additional specialties. We can try to achieve excellence in these different areas. And so that's sort of how things evolved, that as we added people who had skills, we then tried to build up different areas of practice around them.
And there's a lot of folks out there that think you either have to found your firm or maybe not. And that I guess they think that's maybe the only way to do it. But you really have shown, no, there's another way too. You don't have to actually found the firm. You can, it is your firm now for sure. And I'm sure it is completely different, sounds like, than it was when the founders founded it. I don't know if you bought in or how you got in. Maybe we'll talk about that too. But then it became your firm and Presley's firm and whoever it is now. And you guys have taken it and made it your own thing. So you don't actually have to found a firm to really control the firm or control the destiny of a firm.
Absolutely. I tell people, professionally, I was born on third base because I was hired by 2 great trial lawyers who had a very good practice. And it's night and day different now than it was when they ultimately turned it over to Presley and me. But the reason why it's strong is because it's built on a strong foundation that the 2 founders created.
And the other thing I tell people, I get a lot of partners or owners of a firm that come to me and they've been the sole owner, they've never had a partner, and they have a senior associate that says, I want equity, I want in. And a lot of times I feel like attorneys just say they want equity. They think they want equity just because that's just sort of the next trophy to get. They think they want it, but it's not always what it's cracked up to be. And I think you learned that pretty early on, right? Tell me about that.
Oh, I learned it the hard way. So, like I said, our firm was founded by two great trial lawyers, John Riccolo, David Baker. And when Baker went on the bench, then John owned the firm, and I got some equity in the firm. And ultimately, Presley joined in. He got some equity in the firm. And then there came a day when John said, "You know what? I think I'm done being financially responsible for the firm. Let's work out a buyout plan." And that was great. But up until that point in time, Presley and I had never had a professional relationship with the bank. We didn't have a professional line of credit. We didn't have anything set up like that at all. And so the way it worked was Riccolo, we had this discussion, and Riccolo said, "Well, I think as of the first of the year, you guys are now financially responsible for the firm." And then he left to go to his home in Colorado in December, and January came around, and it gets to be the second week in January, and our office manager comes up to Presley and me and says, "Hey, we need money for payroll." Because we, at that time, our firm structure was such that we'd clear out our accounts at the end of the year, and so we just hadn't had any settlements come in the first 2 weeks of the year, and we looked at each other and it was definitely a shock to the system. And when we realized that part of being an equity owner meant that we were going to go home to our spouses and say, "Okay, we're writing checks from our personal accounts to the firm so that we can cover payroll." And that was one of those being thrown in the deep end moments that made us take our firm's financial footing a lot more seriously.
I put myself in that situation, and I can imagine driving home to have that conversation with my wife that night. It would not be fun. Honey, yeah, I'm going to have to write a check. She's like, "Wait, it's supposed to pay you, not the other way around, right?"
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you, like you said, you've got 3 locations now. I want to know a little bit about your thinking, strategy wise. What were you thinking in terms of adding offices? Was it just sort of an organic thing that just sort of an opportunity came up and you did it? Or was it something that you guys said, "Hey, let's open another office," and then you figured out how to do it? What's the thinking behind the new offices?
So the driving force is talent. We had the opportunity to hire lawyers who lived in other places. So our firm was founded in Cedar Rapids. I live in Cedar Rapids. It's the second largest city in Iowa, but Des Moines is the largest. That's the state capital. Dubuque is a decent sized town about an hour and a half north of here. And so, the first thing is we had the opportunity to hire really good trial lawyers in those communities. But we didn't do it just because of that. There's also a lot that we've learned along the way about the benefit of having multiple locations, both in terms of online presence as well as the benefits of the reputational benefits of being in a particular community. And then what we've learned is that it's also a huge opportunity to recruit more talent. The reality is that there are some people that we want to hire who aren't interested in living in Cedar Rapids. Maybe they'd rather live in Des Moines, maybe they'd rather live in Dubuque. And so by having 3 offices, not only are there marketing benefits, but there are also recruitment benefits.
And I should have studied the map. I'm not super familiar with Iowa, but do you guys have any border towns with other states, or any of those border cities? And then do you sort of bleed over into any of the border states at all?
There are some larger by Iowa standards cities that are on the border. So the east border of Iowa is the Mississippi River, and the west border of Iowa is the Missouri River. And so that's where you'll get a lot of the bigger border towns. To the north, we have Minnesota. To the south, we have Missouri, but there aren't any really big towns on the north and south borders, but there are a number of good size communities on those rivers. And so, yes, we occasionally will be called about cases, across the river. We do have lawyers who are licensed in Illinois, to the east, but for the most part, our practice is focused in the state of Iowa.
Well, it helps from a marketing standpoint to just say, hey, boom, we own Iowa, instead of, and we're in a little bit of here and there, but, who knows, maybe down the line you guys will start to venture into other states. I don't know.
You never know. We've had the opportunity to buy firms in nearby states, but we've always focused on, we want to be, the trial firm in the state of Iowa. We want to be the person, the people that you call if you need a trial lawyer in Iowa. And whenever we've had opportunities outside the state, we've always asked ourselves, well, could we use that money to better serve, to better cover Iowa? And so far, the answer to that has been yes. And so that's really where we've decided to plant our flag.
So you mentioned that you've had opportunities to buy firms, and just from conversations with you in the past, my understanding is you have, quote, bought some firms, and then there's others that you've been approached and maybe you did not buy. I want to sort of dive into that a little bit. So, quote, buying a firm can mean a lot of different things. And so I guess the first thing is, what does that sort of mean to you? And then how did you structure those purchases?
So it's happened in a couple of ways. Usually it is a lawyer approaching us because maybe they're looking to retire, and so they want somebody to take over their cases. And so then you're negotiating about, well, what are the assets that we're getting? And so I have sort of a checklist in terms of, it's like, do we get your URL? Do you have a clients list? Do we get your phone number? But ultimately, it's with any firm that we bought, it always falls under our umbrella. And actually, that's probably a big reason why people approach us, is because they're like, hey, I think my practice would fit well under the umbrella of RSH Legal. And so other times we've had lawyers who, they have a firm and they're just looking for institutional support. They're like, hey, I'm of the age, I'm not sure how comfortable I am about spending money to get a new associate or to hire more staff or this. You guys obviously are, a growing firm. And so, can I, is there any way that I can become part of your firm? And so sometimes that means we take over their office space. Sometimes it means they're just coming over. It's been a varied ride. But in general, what I'm wondering is, when somebody approaches me, is number one, what is it that they're actually selling? Is it cases? Is it geographical area? Is it expertise? And then second, does it match our vision of what our firm is and where it's going?
Yeah, and it sounds like you've done it enough where you've got your checklist and you know what fits and
Yes.
what doesn't, and that's key. I think it's a decent growth mechanism for firms is to go sort of take over practices, but not every practice is worth taking over, right?
Oh yeah, and it has nothing to do with money. I just sat down with a lawyer who approached me about buying his practice last week, and it's a great practice. He has built it so that it serves him very well. The reality is that it's a perfect practice for him, and it's just not a great fit for us. And so that's, you've got to look at it critically, because it can be flattering when somebody approaches you. They can talk about numbers that sound, pretty inviting, but there's a whole lot of factors you have to consider before you say that you're going to buy a practice or take over another law office.
And I'd say I've seen it work really well, and I've seen some disasters. So be safe out there, folks. So I want to shift a little bit. It's been fun getting to know you over the last year. And the way I would describe you, in a nutshell is that you are both an eager student, but also a very good teacher. And we'll go into some ways you do that. So one of the things that was last time we hung out, we went to dinner and you were talking about your participation in the Trial Lawyers College. And I think you started as a student, but now you're on the faculty. So, one thing that a lot of lawyers, they feel like once they've finished law school, they're sort of done investing in themselves. And by that, I mean taking extra time, extra money, their own money to go do these things versus what the firm is making them do. And at some point, you decided to do this trial lawyer college. What sort of led you to that?
Well, big picture is I'm a fan of lawyers. I love being around lawyers. I love talking to them about their practices. And in particular, trial lawyers, because that's what I grew up wanting to be. And so I could talk all day about different ways to do an opening statement or how to cross-examine, the other side's expert. And so I've always loved going to seminars, CLE, learning from other lawyers because I'm a fan, first and foremost. And I can always find something that I can learn how to do better. The Trial Lawyers College is a whole different level of investment because it is, its flagship program is a 3-week program where you are going off the grid and you are spending 10, 12 hours a day working on trial skills. And so the Trial Lawyers College, for people who aren't familiar with it was a program that was founded almost 30 years ago by Jerry Spence and several other great trial lawyers, and it has evolved over the years, but it's at its core, it is this 3-week program where you are incorporating the tools of psychodrama into the practice of law. And for me and for my firm, it's been a game changer. We have 9 of our lawyers are graduates of the Trial Lawyers College. That's how strongly we believe that it benefits us.
So 3 weeks, that is a huge. Did you have kids at the time? Did you say, hey, honey, I'm leaving, sorry? How did that go? Tell me about that.
Well, so my partner Presley was the first person in the firm to go to the Trial Lawyers College. Like I said, his specialty is nursing home cases, and he looked around and he noticed that the biggest verdicts in the country in the nursing home space were being won by people who had gone to the Trial Lawyers College. So he went and he came back, and you use the analogy of a marriage. That's how I would describe my relationship with Presley, is that we're married professionally, and just like when your spouse comes to you and says, hey, this is really important to me, I want you to do this, and if you're committed to the relationship, you're going to find a way to say yes. And that's exactly what happened. He said, he came back, he says, you've got to do this, Tim. You will love it. It will change your life. And so I went to my wife, and the nice thing is my wife has, we've known each other since high school, and she's been with me throughout my journey from doing mock trial to going to law school to being a lawyer. She knew that this was important to me, and we have family in nearby who could help with the kids, and so she made it work. And now it's to the point where she likes it whenever I go to a Trial Lawyers College event, either as a faculty member or they have some grad programs, because she says after I come back after a week of using psychodrama, I'm a better listener. I'm more open in touch. And she says, it's tough when I'm gone, but once I get back, it's a better me.
So why don't you explain sort of what psychodrama is, and then how it's used there, and then how that makes you sort of a better trial lawyer? I'm curious.
So psychodrama, it's this therapeutic technique that was developed in the early 20th century by a man by the name of Moreno. And it involves participants acting out events from their life in sort of a structured way using particular techniques. And so it allows people to explore emotions, thoughts, relationships through this role-playing form. And it is perfect tool for trial lawyers because it allows you to gain these insights and develop relationships and understanding of other people's stories in a way that I haven't found you could do it in any other setting. And so the Trial Lawyers College encourages using psychodrama with the lawyers who are students in the college to improve your trial skills. So in other words, there are certain aspects of psychodrama that you can use to give a more engaging opening statement or to give a more effective direct examination. But then the other aspect of it is they strongly encourage that you go back home and use psychodramatic techniques when you're interacting with your clients. And what we've found is that creates a level of trust between our clients and their lawyers that allows you to give tough advice to a client that helps them understand that, hey, you're on their side because you really understand their story. And so whenever we will oftentimes hire professional psychodramatists to come in and do a day of work with our clients before a deposition or before a trial. And those are always events where at that point the attorney-client bond is just stronger and more powerful than ever, and it makes it very easy for the client to trust you to go in and tell their story.
So that sounds pretty intense to me. Is it something that you use on every case, or is it have to be a sort of a substantial enough case for you to really invest all of that in there? I mean, maybe there's techniques that every time you talk to a client, you're sort of using them anyway, but is there a line you have to get to?
Absolutely. So, we don't bring in a psychodramatist to do a day's worth of work on, a $50,000, car crash case. But if it's a case that, if it's, a case where, you're into six figures and there's a good likelihood that a deposition or a trial is going to be key to getting a good outcome for the client, then that's, that we've found that it's a good investment. And it serves a lot of different functions. It's a way to find out your client's stories that need to be told for trial. It's a way to get, to prepare them to tell their stories, either in a deposition or a trial. And so it's, maybe it's $3,000 to $5,000 to bring the psychodramatist in, plus the time of your team to participate. But if you're dealing 6-7 figure case, it's money well spent.
Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. I'd imagine a side benefit would be, you get to know your client, you get to do all, try the case better, present it better. But with this deep bonding, on the marketing side, everybody says create raving fans. I imagine at the end of this thing, these people are out there, you are their best friend and they're telling everybody, I would imagine.
It's, there are few occasions in life where people really get the chance to be heard. And this is one of those occasions. And so they can't help but have, really deep feelings towards you when you go through this process with them. You and I have talked a lot about focus groups. And I always tell people that even in a focus group setting, which is obviously a lot less intense than a psychodrama, the people that you bring in and, you pay $75, $100 for, it's like they walk out of that process, so validated because somebody was interested in what they had to say. And that's, that's rare in this world. And any chance you can give it, it creates a chance that you're going to develop a fan.
The thought has never occurred to me till just now, but for your focus groups, do you stay in touch? Do they go on your list? Do you start staying in touch with your focus group people?
Not as well as we should. So, the way that we do focus groups, and we do a lot of them in-house, it's very important to make sure that they don't know who you are and who you represent, because people will subconsciously, if you're the person springing for the pizza or the sub sandwich, and they know that the money's coming from you at the end, subconsciously it's going to impact how they view the case. And so when we put together a focus group, they're not coming into RSH Legal's law office. They're not getting a check that has our firm name on it. And so we put so much effort into making sure that they don't know who we are up until the time of the focus group, that to then turn around and start marketing to them directly is a little, I haven't figured out the ideal way to make that switch.
That's a good point. And so, like I said, you're a student. You went through the Trial Lawyers College as a student, and then now you're a faculty. So that's one way that you've now teach others. And I know you're committed to that. You do a lot of teaching through Trial Lawyer College and other avenues too. But the one I want to talk about now really is you are a long-time mock trial coach. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, you were a participant, but you're a coach and you're very successful. Your teams have been very successful from what I understand. And so, tell us about why you want to coach and teach others. Why not just move on and do something else?
Well, mock trial changed my life. My dad worked in a factory. My mom was a teacher. I can't remember ever meeting a lawyer in my life before I started participating in mock trial when I was in 8th grade. And that, the opportunity to learn about the justice system in that way, to learn about what trial lawyers do, and then the opportunity to meet my coaches and find out what their lives were like, really changed the trajectory of my life. And so I knew that when I was in law school, I didn't know if I'd stay in Iowa, but I figured, I was going to be around for a couple of years in law school. And so I went back to the teacher who was my middle school mock trial coach and the teacher who was my high school mock trial coach and said, hey, I can help out, And so I started doing that when I was still in law school, and I loved it. It is the chance to work on a craft that I love, storytelling, trial skills, with some of the most talented, hardworking, ambitious people that you'll ever meet, who just happen to be in middle school or high school. And so I started coaching 28 years ago, and I've never stopped, because I've never stopped loving it. And that's in part because, I've coached with other lawyers who are great, who, help take the load. During this time, I've had the chance to coach 3 of my siblings and all 3 of my kids. And I tell people it's the only time that my kids and I have deep conversations about the kind of work I do is during mock trial season. When when we're driving home from practice and they're asking about, maybe a cross-examination they have to do and how, what I do with that in real life. So I love it. It's very fulfilling. And, thankfully, we've been pretty successful over the years. And so, success, breeds more success. We always have this great stream of talented students in Cedar Rapids who want to come out for our teams. And it's always a lot of fun.
It's really cool. I think you said 2 of your partners were students of yours. So you met partners that way and you got to coach your kids. I mean, that's cool. I mean, especially as they get older, like you said, they may not even listen to you at all, let alone about what you do at work. But you had this last run, I think, did you go, is it nationals you took your son to?
Yep. So it was a great, 2023, 2024 was a particularly good time in my coaching career. My son, Ben, who's 14, he was an 8th grader. His team won the Iowa Middle School State Championship. And so that was exciting to be part of that with him. And then my son, Joe, who's 18 and a senior, his team won the Iowa High School State Championship. And when you win the high school state championship, you get to go to the national championship where all the state champion teams go. And he and his team went to the nationals, and they won all of their trials, and they ended up placing fourth in the country. They missed out on the finals by a couple of tiebreakers, but they won every trial they had. So it was a very exciting year.
That's cool. And I imagine an incredible experience for your son to go meet people from around the country. In my mind, I'm thinking it's sort of like when we were kids, sports were mainly sort of, pretty amateurish. But now with all the travel teams and all the all-star teams, maybe mock trials can end up there too. You're going to assemble some powerhouse team of all the top mock trial people in Iowa and really go, right?
Well, as you mentioned, two of my partners are former students of mine. We have three other lawyers who are former students of mine. And so, I know that one of the questions that you often ask is, how do you find talent for your firm? And if, I'd say start coaching mock trial, and eventually it pays off because, we've got all these lawyers in our firm now who I've known since they were, 12 years old. And I know, what quality people they are. And they've had to listen to me talk about, how to do a closing argument for years and years. So there's a lot of trust when we go into the courtroom.
That's a really cool point because, hiring, it's a hard thing to do. Everybody I talk to, it's a challenge. You might get a resume that just looks awesome, and then they get in there and it's a dud. But by working with these people for so long, they work hard. They know what it takes. They're good. They know you. There's that trust. And, I guess if you're not trying cases, mock trial is probably not where you want to get your lawyers from. But yeah, it's worked out well for you. That's pretty sweet. So I want to move on because there's another thing that you teach a lot about lately. That's the rage. It's the new thing. And I think it's really important that we lawyers know about it. And that's sort of AI and the use of AI. And I know you've been studying it a lot. You've been experimenting with it yourself. You've been teaching other lawyers. You've been learning from other lawyers. And so what are some of the cool things you're seeing that law firms, lawyers can use AI for nowadays?
Well, it can do so many things that can make a lawyer's life easier. It is an amazing brainstorming tool. So it's a great way to come up with ideas for anything from analogies, metaphors, different examples of something that you're trying to explain. It is an amazing explainer. And so if you're dealing with a difficult concept that you haven't faced before, whether it's a type of an injury or, like I said, most of what I do is commercial trucking cases. And so if I need to learn how a tire can come off of the axle of a tractor trailer, I can type in, what are the 12 most common ways that, an axle comes off, and it gives you ideas. It is a sea change. And if you commit to playing around with it, using it, you'll find that it can make your life easier in 100 different ways.
And so the one everybody knows about, ChatGPT, that's the one everybody knows about. I know there are others out there. Have you explored some of the others? Are there any others that are good maybe for certain things and not others?
Sure. So in my mind, it makes most sense to put them in categories. So you've got the AI tools that are being created by the legal publishing giants, whether it's LexisNexis or Thomson Reuters. And a lot of the tools that they're creating are fantastic if you're doing a lot of brief writing and research. Not ChatGPT or any large language model is not a great research tool in and of itself. Everybody knows about hallucinations that can be caused, and so you got to double check what's being produced. But so the legal publishing companies are making some fantastic tools if you're doing a lot of brief writing that can really make your life easier. Then you've got some legal specific AI tools. I would put things like Spellbook, which is a great tool for contract drafting and contract review. You've got services like Even Up, which use AI to help create demand letters in personal injury cases. And then you've got the general category of AI tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Google's Gemini or Microsoft's Copilot, and those can be really useful in the legal context. And so a lot of the different things that you can do with AI that I talk about are using those general basic tools, because you can say, hey, for $20 a month, here's a tool that you can use to edit anything that you write, or can help create insights from spreadsheets that you upload into it. I mean, it just, the opportunities are as they're almost endless. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with AI that just involves creativity, and I think that's why I find it so exciting.
I think I've heard something they say, people are saying AI is not going to replace lawyers, but lawyers that use AI are going to replace lawyers that don't, something like that. I probably have it wrong, but
No, that's exactly right. I believe that to be true. And I also believe that will help with what a lot of people refer to as the justice gap. The fact there are a lot of people who need lawyers, who can't afford lawyers, who can't find lawyers. And I think if you put some effort into learning how to leverage artificial intelligence in your practice, you'll have the ability to serve more people. And so that's a really big deal in the state of Iowa. So, like I said, there are 3 million people in the state of Iowa. We have 400 lawyers who are retiring, dying, moving away every year. We are only swearing in about 200 lawyers a year. So, the opportunity for business in Iowa and probably most other states in the United States is only going to grow. And so, but you've got to put yourself in a position to be able to work efficiently, and artificial intelligence can definitely help you do that.
and that leads to maybe my last question on AI. There's a lot of fear out there that, it's going to replace lawyers. We mentioned that already. You've had these fears. Whenever there's a new technology, people are scared that it's going to eliminate jobs. And it may eliminate some jobs, but generally it seems to create more than it eliminates. Do you have an opinion on AI? Are there going to be more lawyers or fewer lawyers?
The legal jobs that AI could potentially take are the jobs you don't want to have anyway. It's like, nobody goes to law school to be to review discovery responses. Nobody goes to law school to hop onto Lexis and check and make sure that the cases that you're citing in your brief haven't been overruled. I mean, at best, AI is a young kind of dumb associate or a law student or a clerk. And so I tell people not to fear AI, because the jobs that it's coming for are not the jobs that lawyers really want to do, and the jobs that lawyers get excited about doing.
Great point. That is a great point. It may hurt certain firms' business models, but in the long run, I think you're right about that. So let's shift. You're in charge of marketing at your firm. I know you do a lot of stuff over there. And every time we meet, I'm just peppering you with questions. You're probably like, shut up. But it's really fascinating to me. And you do all sorts of stuff. You do grassroots, you do advertising, you do everything. And for, an attorney or a new firm owner who's many leagues behind somebody like you in terms of marketing, they look at somebody like you and they are just overwhelmed. And they're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? What do I do? So first thing is, how did you learn marketing, and sort of how did it evolve for you and your firm over time? I'm curious.
So if you remember, I got hired by two trial lawyers. And one day I was sitting in my office, maybe getting ready for a deposition or minding my own business. And they came in and said, hey, Westlaw is doing a seminar about websites. We should probably get one of those. Why don't you go there? And so that was the start of my marketing journey. I had to go to some conference room and listen to the pitch from Westlaw about the websites for law firms. So that shows also how old I am. Most law firms didn't have websites then. And so what I didn't realize is at that moment I became in charge of our firm's marketing, and then it evolved. When one of our the founding partners went on the bench, all of a sudden, it made me realize it's like, hey, where do our cases come from, and what do I need to do to make sure that cases keep coming in? And so that led to learning about everything from pay-per-click marketing to education-based marketing. And then at that time, Iowa had the most restrictive advertising rules in the United States. You could not, when I first became responsible for marketing for the firm, there was almost no advertising, mass market advertising for lawyers in the state of Iowa. You had to put so many disclaimers on any document that you sent out that nobody could put up a billboard because it would be full of disclaimers. You could have a television ad, but it couldn't have moving pictures and it could not have the voice of a lawyer. It had to, for some reason, the Iowa Supreme Court at the time thought that, lawyers were such smooth talking, silver tongued, devils that they would just entrance people if they heard us speak. So you had to have a monotone spokesmodel. So nobody was using TV, nobody was using billboards. A lot of the stuff that we take for granted now wasn't even invented. And so when the rules changed, when the Iowa Supreme Court finally realized that our advertising rules wouldn't stand up to First Amendment scrutiny, then it became a whole new ballgame. And so at that point, I was just trying to learn as much as I could about as many types of marketing as possible, because in our work, plaintiff's personal injury work, the reality is that you can be the greatest lawyer in the world, but if you don't have cases that allow you to show your skills, nobody will ever know, and you sure won't be paid for it. And so I firmly believe that I do my best work on the best cases, and so that's why it started as my job, and it continues to be my job to make sure that I'm putting the best cases possible, not just for my team, but for all the lawyers in the firm, so that they can do their best work.
And so you do it all. You do the grassroots, you do email marketing, you do probably have some events and parties, you have print newsletter, you do all that stuff, and you do ads on TV, probably radio too. But you were telling me a pretty cool story about maybe one of the most valuable ad buys maybe in the history of your firm, maybe anywhere. So why don't you tell us about that? I'll just leave it with that and let you tell the story.
So I am a proud native Iowan, and we celebrate the success of anybody from Iowa. We are the biggest fans, and so because of that, probably the most popular person in the state of Iowa right now is Caitlin Clark, the now professional basketball player, but she was selling out arenas at the University of Iowa when she was playing for the Hawkeyes. And I realized, I'm like, holy cow. I mean, you can't buy a ticket to her games. You can't, you have, people who don't care about sports at all, who are, making an appointment viewing to watch the Iowa women's basketball team play. So I realized that about the time she was a sophomore. And so I went to our broker, the people who buy TV ad time for us, and I said, I want a commercial for our firm on every Iowa women's college, basketball game. And our brokers, who are great, PMP out of Florida, they looked at me and they said, "What?" And I said, "I want to advertise on women's college basketball." And they're like, "Nobody's ever requested that before." And I said, "Trust me, just go, make the buy." And so they came back and they said, "All right, you got it. You're going to be on it, on every game that's shown on cable and this season." And so then the ratings started coming in. And so this, our representative down in Florida is going crazy because he gets the ratings for each of these games. And she's, the Hawkeyes are breaking records. And, they went to, her last 2 years, they go to 2 national championship games with each game setting records. And so I was loving it, but I also realized the train was likely coming to an end. And so my last and probably my smartest media buy was I went to them during her senior year and I said, okay, here's when the WNBA draft is. We're going to find out what team drafts her. And then I want to make sure that we have an ad every time that team is on TV in the state of Iowa. And so we got this amazing buy for really next to nothing, because up until Caitlin Clark was on the Indiana Fever, nobody was watching Indiana Fever WNBA games in the state of Iowa. And now it is appointment viewing. You can't walk into a restaurant or bar with the TV during the WNBA season and not see her game on. And so it's, I've lost money in 100 different ways in marketing, but that's one way that I'm pretty proud about.
That is so fascinating. I love that story. That is just one of my favorite stories. And it gets me thinking. It's sort of like in any investment, like say financial markets or whatever. You want to try to see where the puck's going, so to speak. And so you did it, man. You nailed it. So I'm over here thinking, okay, what can I do? What can I do? I don't do advertising, but that's awesome story. I guess it's over now, right? I guess you can't get the same deal.
No, I doubt they'll ever sell space to me that cheaply again.
Yeah. Well, cool. So real quick, let's sort of wrap it up. But, I want to ask, you've been at this for quite a while in all sorts of roles at your firm. You've seen a lot. Looking back, what's been some of the bigger challenges of just running your firm over the years?
I would say the biggest challenge is being a trial lawyer can be absolutely consuming. A good case, a good trial will take every minute of every day. There's always something you can do deeper. There's always something that you can do more. And, the same goes for running a business. And so the biggest challenge that I've had is trying to set boundaries on things, because you can completely burn out on either of those activities, and trying to do both of them at the same time is, almost impossible. And so trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to focus on? What am I not? What pitches am I going to lay off on, and which ones are we going to swing, from our heels is probably the greatest challenge.
I'm with you. I did a post a while back. I call myself a squirrel chaser. It's just, it comes across my vision and I want it. So yeah, I feel you. So last question, you've done a lot. Your kids, I think, are getting to the point where maybe they're all going to be in college or past that. What's your vision for the firm and maybe for your life over the next 10, 20 years? Do you have it yet?
Well, yeah, it's always a work in progress. For the firm, I just want to be for the people within our firm, I want to be the place where they can go and be the best trial lawyers that they can be. I want them to come here and say, hey, I am completely supported. I'm given all the tools that I need to be great. And I can't imagine going anyplace else, because this is the place that's going to help me be the kind of lawyer I want to be. So that's my internal goal. My external goal for the firm is I want to be the law firm that anytime anybody needs a plaintiff's lawyer in Iowa, they think of us first. If I could have one wish for this podcast, it's that people remember me as Tim from Iowa. And that if they have a legal issue in Iowa, that they give us a call. I probably know more lawyers in the state of Iowa than just about anybody. And if we don't have a lawyer here who can help you, we will put you in touch with the lawyers who can. And then on a personal standpoint, obviously, you want your kids to achieve their dreams. And like you said, I have 2 kids in college now, one who's in high school, and you want to support them so that they can reach whatever heights they want to. And then, for my wife and I, it's like I love to teach, like you said. To the extent that I back away from any responsibilities with the firm, you'll probably see me teaching at the law school at Iowa. I'm an adjunct professor. I'm actually getting ready to teach trial ad in 2 weeks, at the University of Iowa College of Law. I don't see myself ever stopping doing that. People ask me when I'm going to stop coaching mock trial, and I tell them when I stop having fun. And it's still fun for me. I still love doing it. And so, there'll be a lot of things that are different. Let's say 10 years from now, probably won't be handling quite as many cases, probably spend more time being a cheerleader for the other lawyers in this firm. But, there'll probably be a lot of things that are the same.
Well, Tim, I've enjoyed having you on here. So for the people out there that have cases and they need a lawyer in Iowa, or they just want to reach out and pick your brain on trial advocacy or whatever, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The website is fightingforfairness.com. Your email is tsemelroth@fightingforfairness.com. But the social platform that I'm really trying to put a lot of time and energy into right now is LinkedIn. So, hey, reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect. And if you ever need a resource in Iowa, you can reach me through there.
Yeah, everybody go send a connection request on LinkedIn. Get connected with Tim. Tim, this has been real fun. Thank you. I've learned a lot from you this past year, and I mean it when I say when you speak, I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. So I've enjoyed getting to know you, so thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a great podcast you have here, and it was a real honor to be on it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.yourlawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.